Welcome, everyone. This is Heather Cannon of Uniting Distant Stars with our podcast, Stars of Tomorrow. It's episode 8, and we're glad to have you.
Hi, everybody. This is Kevin Na. I'm a volunteer here with United and Stars, and almost to the halfway point of the year here in a few days.
Oh, we don't want that yet. Well, we got to get through June. June is the 6 month, so we still have a month. So
Okay, we're
let's,
getting to that. We're getting to the. We're
yes,
approaching the halfway point. We're
don't
not
rush
quite
it.
there yet, but
Don't rush it. Um, So today's topic is something I reached out to Kevin about. My dad is in memory care and he also is on hospice, and he's got a litany of caregivers, and a lot of them are African immigrants and some of them are Liberian. And one of the caregivers that my sister and I really liked, we hadn't seen in a while, and he had gone back home. I'm not sure what country he's from in Africa. I haven't asked him, but he went back home because his father died, and he was there for 6 weeks. You know, be with the family to go through all the burial process and whatever else he needed to do. And it kind of gets on a larger topic. My first trip to Liberia was in 1998. So living in the country 2 years, and when I got in after the 2000, after the war, everything. I know a lot of times people ask me, why Liberia?
Mhm.
Why aren't you helping back here in the US? And I know Kevin's probably have heard this a lot as well. And I think I got more clarity when my dad had to go into a facility,
Mhm.
that I think we're more of a global community than I think people realize. And that a lot of people come here that are doing work not necessarily people want to do that are born here,
Right.
but they are taking care of our most vulnerable people. And throughout, since actually, my dad was hospitalized when I was on my trip in 2022 to Liberia. And when I came back, he had shingles and he was starting to fall. And he never was the same. He ended up needing to go to memory care, and then a year later that turned into hospice. And he's stable right now, but hospice is, something that can
Mhm.
go on for a while before their life ends. And but I've watched these people, I've interacted with these people, and they get to know the different residents. They get to know their needs, their wants, their favorite things, everything. These are not people that
Right.
don't build a relationship with them. And some residents can be difficult. My dad can get downright ornery sometimes. Sometimes it sounds like he yells at my sister and I more than them. But that's just part of the, dementia and stuff like that. It alters people. And but they go through a lot, they have to deal with a lot. And I think and again, the sacrifice they're making,
Right.
they might have left family members from back home, and whatever money they're making, they're sending back home. And when you realize that this person is taking care of my dad, but wasn't
Mhm.
there to take care of his own dad
Yeah.
because he's just trying to help maybe the broader family. He might have
Mhm.
children there, he might have siblings there, he might have a mom and dad that he was trying to help, but he couldn't be there physically. So that's kind of the what we're going to talk about today. And Kevin, since you're in the Liberian community here in Minnesota, you probably have a lot of insight on this as well.
Yeah. And this is kind of going back to when you first brought this topic to me. You kind of mentioned how I may know a few people that are, in that line of work. And I do know people and have friends that are, CNAs or in these kind of positions where they're taking care of, you know, residents or clients, for others. But it's like, we never really like take a moment to, see what toll it takes on them, once they leave. I mean, for some, it's part of, their career path, school and all that other stuff. But like you mentioned, there are those who that's how they support their families, here and back home. And sometimes, like as it is with most jobs, you kind of have to compartmentalize at times. Like you can't really take what's going on outside and bring it to work, because that, affects your performance. And you know just speaking in a general sense, I've been on that end as well, just generally speaking, where things are going on externally, but if you bring that with you, it just affects you in that work environment. um so yeah, it's and I've visited a few, like, I believe it was when I was a kid. I've visited a few of these places, and just like seeing how these workers, these people, really connect and bond with the people that they're taking care of. But like you said, we don't really know, what they might be going through.
Yeah. And it's, and again, we sometimes can be caught up in our own struggles, our own misery, watching a loved one go through a decline, parts of them disappear, especially if you deal with anybody with memory or like dementia or Alzheimer's. You kind of go through an ongoing mourning process because there's parts of them that do disappear and die. And yet you you don't realize sometimes the people that are might be helping them on this journey um, have things going on in their own lives. And when you get that awareness, it's just, we're all human beings at the end of the day. We all share in the life and death process of, being human. And it's acknowledging that sometimes people are doing a service for you, not realizing that they might be having something that's going very wrong in their lives
Right.
and that equally is out of their control because none of this we can control. And giving, I think, when you look at it, if we just step back a little bit farther, the work we're doing in Liberia is we're trying to help young people have a better life, you know. And here you got people coming to this country, going into this type of work that are giving their time, their energy, sometimes their physical bodies to help people who are most likely on their last leg of their journey in the living world and providing them the comfort and everything they need to have dignity, to have quality of life.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes we don't look big enough.
Right.
We get caught up in our microcosm, but we really have to look at the macrocosm, that there is more of an interconnectedness. And I think when we realize that, we can be better neighbors and better community members when we understand we all share the same struggles and happiness, things of
Right.
that nature.
Yeah. And in some cases, I've seen where those same CNAs or those workers, they'll like try to connect with the families as well. Like when they come to visit, especially if they work closely with, a certain family member, they become kind of like part of that family as well. Because I guess that it's just them trying to be in it with you. Um, so that's just another level to it.
And that
As
is
far as
true. Yeah, at my dad's facility, I know we have people from Liberia, Kenya, and Morocco. And yeah, they do connect with us. And this particular person, if my dad's in the dining room, he'll bring me over a hot tea because he knows I like tea. So yeah,
Mhm.
so that you're right, there is that connectiveness. And and I always make an effort to greet everybody and wish them a good day. thank them when I know my dad hasn't been easy. Um, and I can tell they appreciate that because I'm recognizing them as a human being.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's really just the simple things in life as far as, just like, thank you or, how's your day or just like a small token of like, hey, I know this is kind of like your job, but this is just my way of saying like I really appreciate what you're doing. Um, but as far as going back to my other point, you can even take it a step further, say you learn things about them and their family.
Hmm.
Because that's how you kind of get to know, what their family's like, what their situation is. That way, it's more of an exchange compared to just one side benefiting from it.
That is true. That is true. The woman from Morocco is the one of the nurses there, and she now knows that I've, lived and traveled to Liberia, and so she's more comfortable talking to me about, things that are going on in her life, and she's always checking in on my sister and I, um, and you can see there's that connection with both my dad and ourselves, and just,
Mhm.
and trying to build that with them. I mean, it's definitely um that human connection, that, and I think too it comes back to what we do with Uniting Distant Stars with our students. It's valuing everybody. um Everybody deserves to be valued as a
Right.
person with feelings and hopes and dreams and struggles. And I remember in my early days at the casino, I think it was my third director I had there, he said, you treat everybody well, even the person that might be sweeping the parking lot, you know. And that's always instilled with me. Like if I'm in the bathroom at work, I always thank the person and say hi to the person that's actually cleaning the bathroom,
Yeah.
because a lot of times we just have this like elitist attitude or higher whatever, that our job is better than them or whatever, but some of them's jobs are way more important because no one cleaned the bathroom, we
Right. Exactly.
so we clean our own home bathrooms, but again, like that helps the workplace, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And there's just, we kind of talked about in the pandemic, there's essential jobs, and these caregivers are essential jobs.
Right.
um my dad is at a place right now, none of us kids could afford to quit our jobs because he needs so much care. And I don't know if we could all physically do what he needs to do,
Yeah.
you know.
Just the time,
Yeah,
the time requirement for everything.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's just important that we reflect on the sacrifices and the work that people do and realize it's not one-sided. Like how I started this episode out is, why Liberia? Why not? You
Right.
know, why not? I mean, we're all in it together, and we don't think sometimes what people's acts are, that they do something in return.
Mhm.
We're not paying attention to things. And there's still people who want to be contributing to society. They want to be able to take care of their families. It's no different. And
Yeah.
and so when you learn that caregiving goes both ways, it borders shouldn't matter.
Right. Yeah. And you had a interesting point with COVID. I just want to know if you've spoken to any of the caregivers that I get take care of your dad, if they like if you've heard any of their experience during that time period. I know it was like 5 years ago or so, but still, I'm just wondering if they've been able to share any of that with you, what they might have gone through during that point.
Well, they shifted because my dad was in assisted living at that time.
Okay.
So by 2023, he was now in this newer part of the place, and there's different set of caregivers. So I never thought of asking that because they're not the same group. And, kind of like by 2023, we were starting to put it behind us.
Right.
But that's a good point. No, but that's a good point because some of them may have had loved ones that died, um, since certain communities were hit harder by COVID.
Yeah, and just thinking about the healthcare industry as a whole during that time period, you had Mhm. nurses, doctors, first responders, and having to, do their jobs with all these restrictions and different guidelines, just given what the entire world is facing, like just puts things into perspective that way.
No, and I think that's important. I think we learned, especially with elders, they realized, some of them realized pretty soon that they couldn't keep family away. So, like when my dad was in assisted living, my sister and I signed up to be essential family members because they even did that with family members. And, to make sure we followed the protocols of wearing our masks, washing our hands. Um, when they offered the vaccine, we took it just because we didn't want to be a catalyst of the virus to
Right.
infect others. But at the same time, when you isolate people, they do become more depressed. They do have setbacks. So I think some places caught on, especially when they were seeing a high mortality rate in these facilities because the caregivers could only do so much because they have, X amount of residents where having those family members come in was essential.
Yeah, kind of gives them a bit of a bit relief or a helping hand in that case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, shifting gears just a little bit, you had mentioned, being able to hear other people's like dreams and goals and things of that nature. It just kind of remind me of the virtual tea time we had a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Just being able to listen to everyone and just listen to what they're working on and what they hope to accomplish. That was very engaging and eye-opening. Just being able to hear the different diversity and just see different areas of interest and where their passions are or lie. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime we've done any type of, we've been doing virtual events now since I think 2014. We did it with a Minneapolis-based nonprofit for a while, and like one time we asked what were their career ambitions, and we had lawyers and journalists and auto mechanics on both sides.
Hmm.
We had some of the same fears on both sides. So I think we have to come to a place where we know that we're not so different if we take the time to sit down and talk with people. And I think some people are still in their
Bubble.
smaller networks where I would always just give people a little nudge and say, just expand your network. Just sit down and have tea or coffee with somebody that you would normally not talk to. And you would find out you have more in common. You'll be enlightened by what a person has overcome from whatever part of the world they come from.
Hmm.
I've had an opportunity to sit down with many people from different, whether it was Pakistan or India or Cameroon, Congo, the DRC Congo, Uganda, whether it was here or Liberia. I met a woman during one of my volunteer times from Uganda, and we connected and we stayed in touch for quite a while. I don't know if she's on social media anymore. But just that opportunity to connect and see what you have in common and welcome the differences. The differences are not always negative or bad.
Right.
It's just culture or upbringing or environment, climate, wherever they were in the world, it's really nice to connect with people.
Yeah.
And and broaden that horizon in your own world, because we can be very limited, and like we feel like we're in a safe space if we keep it small, but
Right.
no, it's you're safe. You gotta get beyond your beliefs and your so-called comfort zone, because your comfort zone is not really comfortable. It's kind of a cage where you have more growth and opportunity to learn through by, getting into that uncomfortable zone. But it's it's knowing that, sometimes there's people that may have the same struggle that might live on another side of the world. And,
Right.
I learned a long time ago, sometimes you might have more in common with someone who's not a relative or in your ethnic group or whatever.
Hmm.
And, you know, you don't want to create barriers or limitations in your beliefs based on what you might have heard, because, we always say seeing is believing, right? So once you
Yeah.
sit down with someone and you have that conversation and connect with people, it it changes things, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I find myself being a bit like there are times when I do feel not as eager to reach out or branch out. Maybe it's just like an internal like I'm not sure how this is gonna go or how they're gonna respond to me reaching out. So that's part of it sometimes, but definitely being able to reach out and get different perspectives. In most cases, you learn from the other person and they learn from you, so it's a good exchange that way. Uh, I wonder if the most that do work with residents or in that field, what their, I guess, motivations are. Um, I'm not sure if they any of the workers that you've spoken with or gotten to know if they've kind of explained how they got where they are or what brought them to that position.
That's a good question. I've never like asked that direct question. Um, I know some people, I think it's one of their strengths is that they're good at having that connection with people, that they, I mean, the facility my dad's at is Jewish, and they have a lot of people that are Russian speakers.
Okay.
So they're able to communicate with people that sometimes don't even speak the same language. And I've seen some of them actually learn some of the Russian words so they can have some sort of, interaction.
Right.
And that says a lot about, and again, they probably have, some of them might have dialects or different languages where they came from, so it's easier to maybe pick it up. But they make an effort to connect, so you can see that. Um, the young man in question, he's one that always made sure my dad got his bath or shower, whatever, on Tuesdays. And he's soft spoken, just, calming presence. And it's very rare that I ever see dad agitated around him where he's just having his bad day. Um,
Yeah.
and so some people are just, really good at that. They know how to disengage someone who might be, because my dad deals with agitation. He's on medicine for
Yeah.
it, but it can flare up every once in a while. Like I said, my sister and I can get yelled at, and sometimes more than they do. And but it's not his fault. It's just part of the disease, and which can throw you off guard. I sometimes say it blows up
Yeah.
like a volcano. You're not expecting it, but these people eventually have to build that capacity and not to take it personal,
Hmm.
and to find the ways to distract, deflect, whatever, to get them in a different state of mind. So I think it's and I think for some people I think we've known that through other means, that sometimes this is the job that they can get when they first come here.
Yeah.
And But probably culturally, I think some of it's there too, because we know extended family, a lot of these people, they took care of their elders. So some of it is probably more instinctive based on culture.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, and whenever you deal with people or have to engage with people, it does take, not being able to, not having to take things personally. I
Hmm.
know that's something I struggle with at times, and I have to try and reorientate myself or remind myself not to take it personally. But because as a person, as a human being in general, it is hard to not do that.
Hmm.
And you're right, it does take a certain kind of grace for it not to get to you or for you to be able to overcome it. So I think that's something that kind of gets overlooked um, in most things, especially here. Just being able to have grace for people and being able to interact with people. Because as we've talked about in previous topics, intercommunicate communication skills is, you know, up necessary or needed in order to do most things well.
Right. And I think you and I both have been started out in customer service type jobs. Um, you build up I guess you can build up your people skill muscles besides skills. It's kind of like a muscle.
Yeah.
And I think as you mature and over time, you realize that some people who might be unruly um, might be also having a bad day because if we ever pause and see ourselves acting that way, in a different time period, in a different situation where we're having a bad day and we're unruly in we all are capable of that. But again, grace needs to go both ways.
Yeah.
We need to give ourselves grace sometimes too. And but we have to realize that we're all human. When you get honked at in the car, you might have, accidentally did something you didn't mean to. You just, something you might be, deep in thought on something that might be going wrong in your life or whatever. We don't think about that. We just think, oh, they just made my day miserable because they did X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
And they didn't intentionally probably do anything to you. They're just having a bad day, and then somehow
All
that
right.
turned your day into a bad day.
Yeah, it's a bit of a domino effect
Yeah.
that way, but
Yeah, but once you can learn not to take it personally and like, just give them grace, say sorry or whatever, or sometimes just being quiet and so, not adding fuel to the fire can help. Um, it's a learning process, I'll tell you that. Um, Human beings are complicated. I know one of the things I like to do when I walk, I always like to say hi to people.
Mhm.
And every once in a while, you come across a person where they lift their head up and you put a smile on their face. And you think to yourself, maybe that person was having a bad day and maybe we're feeling even invisible. But because you acknowledge their presence, that was just
Right.
a small gift to them.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever give someone the nod in passing, or it's that non-verbal communication. You just see someone just like, you know,
Hmm.
yeah, I acknowledge you.
Well, like in small town living, it was always you lift the finger up on the steering wheel as your way of saying hi when you're driving by somebody. There's all these different gestures, and 'cause it's hard to do in the metro, but that's what you would do. And it's like you'd recognize the car or the person, you would just lift your one finger up to, say hello. I acknowledge you, and I think that's what's most important is acknowledging someone else's humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, I would always like whenever I guess a bus driver would pass another bus driver, they would kind of like put their hand up. I never really understood what that meant. For the longest time, I'm just like, So why are they doing that? Um, and then another example would be, I don't know if you know about this one, but if you own a Jeep, I guess there's this thing where it's like they'll put up a peace sign or something like that. Uh,
I
they're
had a
just
Jeep. I had a Jeep once. I don't remember the peace sign, but yeah, you do get, I
yeah, it's like if you
had a
see someone
Wrangler
in
for a while.
yeah, it's like if you have a Jeep and you see someone in another Jeep and you're both just like
Yeah.
throw up a peace sign. I think I came across that one by watching a commercial they were doing for
Oh, interesting.
one of
Yeah,
their
I don't remember
vehicles.
the peace sign,
I
but
was
you'd
just like,
always you would acknowledge each other. I know that. And interesting.
yeah, I have a coworker that has a Jeep, and I asked them if that's an actual thing. They confirmed it. They also confirmed there's this thing where I guess they have rubber ducks like on the not on the dash, but you know that area where you can like kind of set stuff.
Oh, see, I
It's
didn't go
like
that
if
far.
right. So for all the Jeep owners out there, if this is correct, please let me know because
Yeah,
you
we
know
inquiring minds need to know because
it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, it's just like one of those community things that maybe not everybody knows about, but unless you're a part of that community, then you don't know about it.
right.
But
No, because yeah, it's a fun. The Wranglers were nice. Because mine you could take the doors off. It had a hard top and a soft top. Um, so you didn't have any electronic windows or doors, which sometimes I
uh,
think is safer. Um, but yeah, and but yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways of having community. Like if people know that you're a part of maybe some sort of sorority or fraternity, or you're with some sort of like Rotary group or something like that. I think if people like wear a pin, there's always different ways of people finding
right.
ways to like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, campfire, whatever, kids, all that type of stuff. I think there's all those way of connecting with people and again, it's
Yeah.
just I think what you said, the title of this was like the silent struggles. I think humanity, having your own humanity and recognizing someone else's humanity. Um, it doesn't always have to be in the groups, whether it's what
Right.
vehicle you own or what church you go to or anything like that. It's really just, being your best selves and treating people well, but also taking the time to acknowledge that each and every one of us are struggling, can have bad days, can have awful days. There could be horrible things that happen to us. And like we talked about earlier, not take it personally. And, there are certain things that can cross a line, but for the most part,
Yeah.
most people are fairly decent where they're not crossing those lines. Um, and again, that's where we got to know the difference.
Yeah. Just extending an olive branch or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was at the bus stop last week, going home from downtown, and I had my Wolves cap on,
Mm.
because it's playoff time, and then I saw this other guy who conveniently he was the same guy I saw get on the bus earlier that morning.
Okay.
Um, I saw the same guy, and he had a Wolves cap on a different color, but it's just like we kind of like looked at each other and we're just like. Yeah. So, so just one of the another quick one of those like nonverbal kind of kind
Yeah.
of community things you got going on, you know,
Yep. Yeah, it can just be wearing your
sports fans
favorite
and all that.
sports. Yeah, your favorite sports hat or jersey or shirt or whatever. Yeah. No, yeah, like I said, we can connect in so many different ways and there's, you realize that the invisible borders we like to create start coming down when
Mhm.
you have that acknowledgement, that,
Yeah,
yeah, we're both Timberwolves fans.
right.
Yeah.
That simple hello leads to more conversation, and you don't really
Hmm.
know what else you might find out about that person from there.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we continue to be okay talking. I know, like, more and more neighborhoods are becoming more diverse. And saying hi to your neighbors and getting to know your neighbors. When I was married, we had some neighbors that moved in that had come from Egypt. We had another group that came from Bosnia. And when the tornado signs were going off, my ex was big on storms, and he went to the ones that came from Bosnia, and he saw that they were terrified because they thought it was a air raid
Hmm.
siren. So sometimes you you look out for people that have maybe come from very difficult situations and empathize with some things that might scare the hell out of them that we might not even think twice of, like a tornado siren.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So, what do you? This is probably the last question I'll ask, but so what kind of things do you think can be done as far as fostering engagement, whether it's events or I guess just bringing a group of people together. I know for me, when I used to live in a cul-de-sac, when I used to live in Coon Rapids, we were in a cul-de-sac, and every 4th of July, or I think it was 4th of July, there'd be this national night out event they'd
Hmm.
have. So pretty much the whole neighborhood just comes out, and you meet, you talk to people, eat food, and they had these minnow races that we did as kids. I know now it's like, really? You're racing minnows? But like at the time it was like a fun activity that everybody was engaged in. So I guess what kind of things do you think could be done to foster more engagement, as far as, if you're not really one to reach out on your own, something that could probably help you to do that.
Well, one of the most recent things was last year. We had the Summer Olympics. So at work, we created our own little Olympics. And I work in a building where we have a north and a south building.
Mm.
And first, it was going to be the tax group with one of the operation groups that we worked with, but then we expanded it north to south building. And we had like those throwing like plastic darts, and we had the giant Connect Four, and we had what's the sandbag thing? Cornhole.
Cornhole?
Yeah, and then there was a frisbee game. And so people loved it. People came down because we had two different hours, and so there was opportunities for people to come down for an hour and then go back do their work. But they loved it, and it was people that 'cause sometimes people don't interact between two buildings. I should say, even though they're connected, they're still
Right.
siloed on their floor in their building. And this was a way where we brought people together and everybody had fun. There was laughter, there was levity, um, just everything, and it didn't matter anybody's ability. It just people had fun. And it was a way for people to finally get out of their cubes. and,
Yeah, I
and
I love those D&I events that get held sometimes. I try to go to a couple or a few as I
Mhm.
can, but it's like you said, just bring people from like different lines of work, or even if
Yeah,
you're in a different building, just into one area where you can, do a fun activity, or, get to know others that are there as well. So, yeah.
yeah. No, I just, and I'm one that let's say, okay, let's try this. Let's do something to break the ice in a way, without saying words, just do it. And
Right.
yeah, and again, take even though I think we did it in August, so the Olympics were already done, but it was still going with that theme,
Right.
and just and I think some people don't realize sometimes doing something fun is a great way to connect people
Hmm.
because it allows people to take down their guards. They can
Right.
relax, do something.
Yeah.
And yeah, no,
Yeah.
no,
But I think this
thank
is one
you.
of I think that's been one of our I guess most engaged topics. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're all great, but it's like just like being like we both have different examples and things that we can like point to. So yeah, definitely a good one.
Yes, it is. And I think it was important because like it really made me think harder after, I realized because it was like, oh, where was he? He's been gone for a while. We thought, we didn't know what happened to him. And then when we see him and then you find out why he was gone, you just like, oh man,
Oh,
you
I
know?
didn't even know.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, well, let's get into announcements. I got a few of them. I'll be sharing the vent decoration have already started their practicals for our eighth cohort that started in April. They
Yeah.
were taking plastic spoons and they're putting it on a circle cardboard and they're making what they call a wallflower. So I will put that in there. But it's kind of fun what event decoration does. They do a lot of handmade items. Like when I came back last year from Liberia, they took like the bottom of what we would call a flip-flop here, and they instead of having the regular plastic, they created beads, they put like some sort of string and they put beads on there so they decorate them themselves. Now they call them slippers over in Liberia. They made a floor mat using like leftover fabric and tying that into if you've seen those large rice bags, that's what they
Yeah.
sewed it into as the backing. So I think event decoration does a better job of maybe reusing things than maybe some of our other courses do. We also had something very disappointing that happened recently. We leased our center in Liberia, and earlier this year we received an encroachment notice where the government is deciding to do some roads. And there was no notice on when they were going to enact it. And we had forwarded this to our landlord, but we noticed the landlord hadn't received it yet. Well, anyways, on Wednesday, a front loader came in, or actually, except a week ago, Friday, it started. It didn't touch us until Wednesday. They started taking down like people's porches on their house. On Wednesday, we have a hotel right in front of us. They took down their fence, took down our fence, and part of one of our classrooms.
Oh wow.
So I put that out on the Facebook group, Kevin. So if you haven't seen it yet, um, so it was a setback. It was a disappointment.
Yeah.
Because our fence was where the old fence was when we leased the property, so we thought that was, property line. No one
Mhm.
ever told us differently. So right now they've instructed that using the zinc metal as a temporary fence until we know next steps. But it was a loss of money. It was a loss of space because it looks like they cut
Right.
it back maybe about 6 feet. We will be getting how much square feet we did lose. So that was, frustrating. But
Yeah.
again, it's about rebuilding our resiliency and our continued resiliency.
Yep.
The other thing we got coming up here in June, Tashi George, who's been a longtime partner of us, she has her next BIPOC Business Expo on June 25th. UDS is the featured nonprofit.
Okay.
We're really excited to continue our partnership with her. So I will put a link to that event if you're in Minneapolis and you have a business that you'd like to be part of it. I think this is her fourth annual one. It's really been a good program. We were there a couple of years ago. We had a table. Unfortunately, I had a family emergency where I couldn't do it last year.
Right.
So I highly recommend that. Also, Bronco Tamba, who's got the Tamba Foundation, he's hosting a house party on June 28th to help fundraise for us. So I will put a link in for that. He has been a longtime supporter of ours as well, and his foundation is dedicating some of their work to UDS. So it's really exciting about that. Um, again, I want to ask if anybody's interested in being a board member or volunteer. We definitely are looking for board members that want to help us with our next strategic plan. We have a lot to do in the next 3 to 5 years, and we want to make sure we create a roadmap that will get us to those goals. Uh, we are leasing a place. We start paying rent again next year, and we'll be doing that for 5 years, but it will still be part of a lease. So we're not going to be vulnerable where if they want to kick us out, they could. We
Right.
do have some new land in Brewerville, which is outside of the Monrovia metropolitan area. It's close to a neighboring county, Balmy County. We would like to start building that. Our thing we still have to finalize is the plans. But we need people to help us not only move us forward and how we can make that a more modern place, but also the fundraising to make it happen. All nonprofits are challenged right now in this current climate, and we just want to make sure we get people helping move us in the right direction. If you're not interested in events, but you want to support us, there's a couple ways you can do it. We have the Stellar Course sponsor. We always need learning materials, and we have a list of what materials we need for each course. We do pride ourselves that we give our students 85% hands-on learning.
Mhm.
This is what makes them successful when they graduate. They find jobs or they become self-employed. Usually the vast majority of them are self-employed than actually being employed by someone else. Or you can become a star supporter. This is a monthly donation. We range from $10 to $175 are our monthly donors. It really helps with sustainability. We always have things that are going on. There's needs for the day-to-day operations, whether it's just stationary for the classes that we provide, or we have some uh, things we got to fix at the center. We want to make sure we have the cleaning supplies to keep it clean,
Mhm.
all those type of things. And it's a really big help. So whatever you can do there would be most grateful. And this episode will be out May 31st. We found out Saturdays are the best day for us to air these.
It's the
And
weekend.
it's a weekend, yes. And maybe one of these days we might do it live. Kevin and I will have to figure that out. But we just are grateful for everybody who's taken the time to view it, share it, comment. We're always welcome to your ideas. If you want to join us in a conversation, we also welcome that. So it is Memorial Weekend right now, so we hope that you do some reflection on that here. There's a lot of people who sacrificed for the US, and some of them are actually Liberians that
Mhm.
actually sacrificed for this country. And so, I think it's a time to reflect on who has made sure we have the rights we have and we want to continue to have. So thank
Right.
you for being part of this community.
All right. Yep. And if you do always wants to check out our episodes, you can always check us out on YouTube and well, check out our YouTube channel, which you can be found on our website, unitedstars.org. Also check out our other social media pages on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See
All
you
right.
next
Bye,
month.
guys.
Bye bye.